Hey everyone, it's Steven. Today I have the 2024 Porsche Panamera 4. This is the full-size luxury sedan from Porsche, and it competes with things like the Mercedes S-Class, Audi A8, and the Lexus LS. So the 2024 Panamera was fully redesigned for a third generation, and it brought a lot of much-needed changes to this aging vehicle. You've got a fully revamped interior setup with fully digital displays, which is super cool, looks much more modern, and you've got a subtle change on the front fascia, which makes it look a bit more modern in line with the rest of the Porsche vehicles, but you've still got that very quintessential Porsche look. So the 2024 Panamera starts above six figures for the base MSRP here. The 4 is the trim with all-wheel drive, but you do get also some other goodies that bump up the starting price tag of this to $106,000. As tested, the one I have here is pretty decked out, so it's $133,000 as tested. It's got a lot of really cool options that make this really feel more premium than your average Panamera. But again, this is such a ridiculously high asking price for this vehicle. A lot of people will just want to get a 911 instead, right? But of course, with the high price tag, you do get a lot of car. First of all, it is a Porsche, right? You've got that prestige in the brand name, and you've got a really nice engine. This is a 2.9 liter twin turbo V6, pumps out 348 horsepower and 368 pound-feet of torque. That gets you 0 to 60 times of 4.7 seconds. You can actually get a little lower also if you get the Sport Chrono package, which unfortunately this one doesn't have. This is all mated to an 8-speed dual clutch transmission. That is Porsche's PDK automatic transmission that comes standard with rear-wheel drive, but the 4 I have here is the all-wheel drive variant. This setup gives you fuel economy numbers of 18 city, 25 highway for a combined 21 miles per gallon. However, if you do want a more fuel-efficient vehicle, since those are pretty bad numbers in general, you can get the e-hybrid version, which actually just came out in the 2025 model year. You've got some really crazy powerful ones like the Turbo S, which goes 0 to 60 in like 2.5 seconds or something like that. Of course, it has a price tag to, compete with that. But if you want a more fuel efficient one, the e-hybrid is a really cool option. So the Panamera has long been one of my favorite designed vehicles. I think it looks stellar, and this third generation honestly just made it look better in my opinion. I love this color here. This is Gentian Blue, one of Porsche's classic colors. I believe it's like a $1,600 option on this vehicle, so it is quite pricey, but I think it looks so good, especially in the direct sunlight. Honestly, in the dark, whatever, it looks fantastic. Porsche didn't really make any huge changes to the front, but you can see that you have a new headlight design with these 4 headlights in one, which is kind of cool. I think it's a very nice look, and they do a really cool startup dance as well. I am a big sucker for startup dances. You do also have a bit of a revamped grille design here with all fully functional vents, which is really cool. I think that'll make a lot of traditionalists very happy. And otherwise, the front, it just looks classic Porsche, right? And I think that's not a bad thing. It looks just kind of like a longer 911, a beautiful vehicle. So going into the side profile here, you do have these really beautiful, but very expensive 21-inch aerodynamic wheels. These look very nice, but honestly don't know if I'd pay, I think it's like $3,800 option for these wheels, so kind of crazy. You do get some standard black brake calipers that say Porsche. They look quite nice. But yeah, these are some large wheels, but it fits kind of the imposing figure of this vehicle in general, right? You can see from the side profile, it's very long and it's very muscular. You'll see in the back, it's got a much wider stance. So definitely gives off that sporty muscle car vibe, but of course it still looks very luxurious, right? You do have these vents on the side. I do love that. I think it looks very nice. And they're not doing like flush door handles like that or anything, but these door handles look very nice. They actually have this two-tone aluminum chrome thing on it, which looks very, very nice. Of course, along the entire side, you do have that nice aluminum trim along the entire window, which looks really nice, looks very luxurious, kind of matches with the chrome, of course, on the door handles and also on the wheels. So I think it's a very cohesive look. You do have blacked out B pillars and C pillars here as well. And just overall, I think it's a really nice look from the side. Going into the rear, this is one of my favorite parts of this vehicle. I think it looks like a spaceship. I think all Porsches kind of look like spaceships. They look really, really cool. You've got a full light bar in the back. You've got the Panamera 4 badging. I love the font they use. I think it is the most luxurious looking font out there, honestly. And I love the way Porsche has done their, redesign over the last few years of just spelling out Porsche. It looks so nice. Aside from that, you do have a trunk, of course. It is power operated, of course, at $133,000, you would expect that. You've got about 17 cubic feet of cargo space here, and it's reasonably deep. I think a lot of people will be happy with the amount of cargo you can put in here. It's not very tall, but it is quite long and deep. You can fold down the second row seats as well, so you can get 47 cubic feet of cargo space if you fold down the second row. And what's really cool is that you can actually store some more stuff in here. So they have some pretty clever storage solutions here. And you'll also notice you have got some nets and stuff like that. So very easy to kind of get groceries and stuff like that and kind of use the storage compartments here. Oh, also I just noticed this thing too. You've got some additional things where you can kind of tie things down. So very, very nice compartments for storing any sort of things. Aside from that, the rest of the rear isn't the most exciting. I think it looks very nice in general, but you don't get any like crazy aggressive tailpipes or anything like that. You'd have to step up to something like the GTS for that. But yeah, these are actually really interesting because it is actually 4 tailpipes in the back, but they're housed in 2x2s, which is kind of an interesting look, but it looks fine. There's no actual like rear diffuser or anything like that, so it doesn't look that special, but it definitely sounds good. Let's take a listen. Let's go into the interior of the 2024 Panamera. So as expected, you've got keyless entry. One of the nice luxury perks is that you do have this nice indentation that can lock the door from any one of the doors, which is definitely expected at this price point. Again, I really like the contrast of the chrome and the body painted door handle. And going inside, as expected from a $133,000 vehicle, you do have a lot of nice amenities. The interior is very similar to what you get in the Taycan. So if you've been in the Taycan, this is going to feel very reminiscent. I also have a review of the 2022 Taycan, and it's all going to be very similar. You've got the same fully digital setup that they've done, and this is in the redesigned 3rd generation of the Panamera, which definitely looks a lot more modern. Looks very different. If you guys are used to the older interiors of Porsches, you'll notice a lot of differences. All right, I'm not going to go too far in detail about most of these tech screens since it's very similar to the other redesigns that Porsche's come out with recently, like the new Cayenne. But I do want to talk about just the general interior color and how beautiful this interior is. So again, you've got a lot of packages on this vehicle. This one is fully decked out. You've got this gorgeous, what they call Kalahari gray. It's interesting because it's really more of a beige, but I guess you can call it a gray. But you've got this contrast between the Kalahari gray and the black leather interior. So this one has that leather interior package. I think it's like $4,800 or something like that. So definitely very pricey, but it really does make it feel like a premium vehicle, right? You've got stitching all across the dash and all across the door panel. There is not anything that doesn't feel high quality in this, which is what I really, really like. Like, these door panels look beautiful. You will also notice that, I mean, you can't really tell in certain lighting, but it's actually accented in neodyme. Neodyme is basically this bronze color that they have, you know, right here on the handle that opens the door. It's beautiful, and it's kind of all throughout the cabin. You'll notice it actually on the steering wheel as well, which is super cool. It looks very interesting, and I will say the thing is you can't really tell in some lighting, but I think that's a good thing, right? I don't really want some very flashy bronze all throughout my cabin. I think this is a very classy look. You've also got this really nice wood trim, and it's actually what they call eucalyptus, which is kind of confusing to me because in my head eucalyptus I think of green, right? Like a dark forest green or something like that, but this is the nice eucalyptus wood that they have. So this vehicle truly has some of the most beautiful interiors that I've ever seen. Like, I just love the contrast of materials. It looks very, very good. This Kalahari gray, I love it. The seats are also really beautiful. Unfortunately, they don't have the Porsche crest. I guess they skimped out on that option, which is still a little ridiculous that that even is an option, honestly. It should be standard at this price point. But if you know Porsche, they really do. Everything is a la carte, so you have to pretty much purchase everything additionally. But these seats are very well bolstered, very beautiful. And I mean, I like that the design is very simple, right? It's not like anything weird or, you know, it doesn't have all those weird like textures like a lot of other vehicles have. They're just simple and elegant, and everything feels very well constructed. That's one of the biggest differences between this interior and something like the BMW 7 Series or the S-Class, is that everything here just feels really solid and well put together, whereas in some of those vehicles, right, it feels a little more gimmicky, right? Like, everything feels great, of course, you know, you're at the $130,000 price point, right? Everything feels great, but you know, the BMW has that like glass shifter and all that sort of like crystal stuff, and the S-Class is also very flashy in terms of the interior and the exterior, honestly. Whereas this Panamera is truly meant for, you know, you know it's a Porsche. You know the prestige behind the brand name. You understand that this is just a well put together interior. Obviously, one of the things that you'll probably quickly see here is there is a lot of shiny black plastic. So that is definitely one of the hardest things to keep clean, I would say. I have a microfiber cloth that I've been keeping in this vehicle to kind of wipe it down daily after I use it, because that's truly the only way to keep this looking good, right? Like, this is just all a fingerprint magnet, like everything, the door panels right there, you know, all the screens, right? Like, you're going to be using fingers to, you know, just, it's going to get messy, I think. That's the thing, is like, there's just no way to kind of keep this clean looking, because like just so reflective. It does look premium though, right? So I think that's something that I think a lot of the car manufacturers are having to balance right now. All of these feel really good. They're very clicky. You can see like they feel premium. I will say it's a little hard to reach here without taking your eyes off the road though. So unfortunately, I don't think this is the best implementation. I still think having some button or a knob or something like that is probably better, but it looks very nice. I like that you can easily pull up the climate menu. You have these cool looking vents, but you can only control the direction of the airflow in this screen, which is kind of disappointing. One thing I really like is that you can dictate whether you want it to be soft or strong. And for me, I'm one of those people who, like, I feel like when you usually use an automatic air conditioning thing, it's always so strong. Like, I feel like it's always like blowing air at you really, really strong. And I don't know if I need it to be that strong. So I love that you can set it to be soft. I really like that. As you can see, I also have the ventilated seats on right now. It is super hot and they feel incredible. You do get ventilated and heated seats on this vehicle with that premium package. So unfortunately, it's not a standard thing. That premium package is like $7,400, but you get a ton of things like the 360 surround camera and the ventilated heated seats. And I think this one also gets the massaging seats as well. The massaging seats feel pretty good. They don't feel as pushy, I feel, as some of the other German competitors, but they feel good. I'm glad that it has that option. It does make it feel a lot more premium. Otherwise, let's just kind of talk about the center console right now. It is very beautiful, very nicely laid out, and the armrest works really well right here, also feels very premium. You'll notice this accent right here is also neodyme, right? Interesting, right? It's not really aluminum. It's a little bit of a bronze, very interesting. So you've got also two cup holders. They are very easy to put drinks into. They're very good at keeping them in place. You've also got two USB-C chargers, unfortunately no USB-A. Seems like that's kind of the direction the industry is moving into. And you've got this nice rubber mat for your wireless phone charger. I love this rubber mat. It keeps it very stationary. I've had a pretty good experience using this wireless charging pad. I feel like a lot of other ones, you know, your phone will slip off and things like that. This one keeps it stationary and it doesn't seem to overheat. So I think Porsche has solved a lot of those issues that they had in some of their other vehicles. All right, let's talk about the actual setup here in front of the driver. So you've got your 12.6-inch curved display. This is a brand new display. Again, this is also in the Taycan and some other vehicles now, like the Cayenne, but it's fine. You can't really configure too much. You've got this option, this button right here that kind of lets you go between the different things. I don't know if you can even tell right now, but basically I'm going in between these three circles, essentially, and then you've also got the heads-up display up here. And I'll show you guys what that looks like and how you can configure that right here. Pretty configurable, it's pretty nice. I think overall the heads-up display is, you know, high quality, HD. So there's really not too much that you can change here. Of course, this is very similar to what you get in Audi, where you can see your map display. And it looks, you know, it does look really nice. I do like the fancy graphics that they use when you're shifting through the different displays. Kind of a neat touch there. All right, so the actual steering wheel itself is a classic Porsche steering wheel, feels very good. It's very thin. If you haven't used a Porsche before, their steering wheels are very thin, and I didn't like that at first, but they feel really good, and they really like, I feel like they challenge you to maneuver better, honestly. They feel really good. I love the drive mode selector dial right here. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have the Sport Chrono package, so you don't have that boost button, essentially. But you can switch between Sport and normal. And Sport, you'll notice that the car starts lowering, so you do have an adaptive suspension that can kind of change, you know, depending on how sporty you want the chassis to feel. Also, the auto stop start just kicked in, which is annoying. In order to disable it, I think the only way to get there is here, which is kind of frustrating. I really wish there was a button that you could use just to turn it on and off. I believe you can program this to do that, but right now I have this program to show the 360 camera. Really beautiful, high quality 360 camera here. It also works flawlessly, unlike in my Macan. So I think they've definitely corrected whatever software they needed to do for that, because it works really, really great. Turns on immediately when you reverse the vehicle, and there are no weird issues with it. All right, otherwise the steering wheel, you've got pretty much everything typical. You have these tiny little paddle shifters here in case you wanted to have some manual fun. And then of course, in classic Porsche fashion, you can only skip track. You can't reverse track. So very, very typical. I believe you probably can map it in this diamond, but honestly, there are too many things that I want to put in that diamond key. So I'm not going to spare reverse track just for that, or previous track. All right, here's where you got all the adaptive cruise control functions. So Porsche has something called InnoDrive, which is actually quite cool. But basically, you can set different modes of your assistance. So you can use adaptive cruise control or just speed limiter. Adaptive cruise control functions pretty similarly to what you would expect. You've got lane keep and all that sort of basic stuff. But with Porsche InnoDrive, you do get lane trace. So it essentially is almost level 2 semi-autonomous driving. Unfortunately, it's not as good as the competitors, I would say. It's a bit more limiting, and I feel like the technology just isn't there as much. I feel like I've heard a lot of issues that people have had with the Porsche assistance tech in terms of it phantom braking, things like that. In my Macan, I have had one instance in the past 2 years where it hit the emergency brakes and there was no vehicle in sight around me, so that was kind of scary. But aside from that, I do think their tech works fine most of the time, but definitely a bit more finicky than some of their other rivals. All right, and lastly, you've got the two dual 10.9-inch touchscreens here. This one is optional for the passenger, and look how it's so tinted you can't even see that there's anything there. If I start shifting the camera over, you can see it. It's like magic. It's very, very cool. With that one, you can control a lot of things like the music. You can pull up the navigation. You can look at the weather, whatever you want. There are quite a few options there. This screen runs Porsche's latest. So this is kind of cool. When you turn on adaptive cruise control, you can kind of see if you want it to follow the route, follow lane keeping. That is part of the Porsche InnoDrive package. It'll also let you set it to the speed limit, which I've heard a lot of people get very frustrated with, because, if you're driving on the freeway 10 over and then it just hits a 55 zone, you'll slow down pretty dramatically, and I think a lot of people have issues with that. But yeah, otherwise this system is okay. It's pretty intuitive. I do really dislike how there's a vehicle and settings. It's always confusing, like what is in what in the vehicle. And then of course there's a lot of overlap, right? Like a lot of these things are also in the settings. So it's a little confusing, but yeah, so basically this is kind of how you go into the actual displays. You can kind of adjust the different things, brightness, all that sort of good stuff, position. All of your music displays are in here. You can change the bass, treble, all that sort of good stuff. With the Bose surround system, which you get with the premium package, which by the way is okay. I feel like for a $133,000 vehicle, I would expect more, but it's quite good. I think the base Bose system has always left a bit more to be inspired by. But this one is definitely a worthy upgrade, I would say. But the Burmeister really is where it's at. That one sounds phenomenal, but you have to pay a lot for that. But yeah, so you've got a few different cool options here. I've been playing around with the surround linear and the sound true thing, but honestly, the combination of just leaving them all on seems to sound the best to me. But yeah, you've got the ability to adjust your sounds for the different types of beeps and the park assistances that you have. Otherwise, pretty much everything here is quite intuitive, so I feel like it's not too difficult to get the hang of it, and it is snappy. You'll see it is quite fast to respond. Apple CarPlay is easy to hit, an easy button right there. I will note that it's annoying that the 360 surround camera doesn't have a button that you can hit. Like, if there was a quick button or anything like that. This thing is weird because it brings you to the park assist option, which allows it to automatically park the vehicle for you, which might work pretty well in parallel parking situations, but still definitely isn't as good as things like the Tesla. So I really don't know how many people use this, but you can go here and see your 360 surround camera, but that's a lot of clicks, right? Like, I really wish there was a certain button that you could just hit that would take you to the 360 camera so that I could free up my diamond. I feel like there's so many things I want this diamond to be. But yeah, otherwise, this looks good. It looks very high-tech. It looks modern. The passenger display is a cool thing that I think a lot of people will enjoy. I really don't know how often passengers will interact with it, but it looks cool. All right, let's go into the second row here. Second row doesn't have as much space as you might imagine for an executive vehicle, right? This vehicle, you'll notice, is very different from some of its competitors in that it's not really meant as a chauffeuring vehicle. It's really meant for someone who likes the driving experience and wants an executive vehicle, right? So coming back here, I mean, you can tell just how good everything looks, right? Like, it doesn't feel low quality. I think that's the coolest thing, is that, like, with a Porsche, everything just looks and feels incredible, right? Like, you can really do ASMR across this entire cabin because it just sounds fantastic. All the materials are really good. Even this right here doesn't look the fanciest, but you can just tell that the materials they use are much higher quality than what you would get in, say, a Toyota or Honda. You've got a little storage right here that feels very nice, and you'll notice that this is actually in the 2+1 format. So you actually can't sit someone here. I mean, I guess you could, but they would certainly not be comfortable, and there is a reason this is a different color. Although they do have a seatbelt, which is kind of interesting. So you do have this nice, oh, look at this neodyme accent as well. Looks very cool. You've got 2 cup holders right here. They are fine. Nothing too special here. It's a good armrest though if you have 2 passengers back here, which this is definitely meant for. You've got a very similarly adorned door panel. It looks really good, that neodyme accent. You've got a lot of that piano black again, and the Bose speaker grille looks pretty good. And the stitching, it just looks really, like all of the stitching just looks really, really excellent. And I love the way Porsche isn't super flashy. I think that is a very unique thing at this price point. Whereas, like, you know, Porsche obviously does some things that are a little gimmicky, like that passenger display, but at the same time, their cabin just looks and feels more premium than its competitors. Legroom is okay. It's, you know, definitely not nearly as spacious as something like the 7 Series or the S-Class, but, you know, you've still got a lot of space. I don't think anyone will be unhappy with the amount of legroom you have here. It's an extraordinarily comfy seat. I really like that they actually have like a nice little like thigh bolster right here on the side so that you can kind of rest your thighs on that. And overall, I mean, it just feels really good and very well deserving of that kind of premium cabin feel, but it's just not as spacious, right? Like, this vehicle is certainly shorter than the S-Class and the 7 Series. All right, a few other miscellaneous things I wanted to mention before I show you guys what this vehicle is like to drive. One of the cool things that I liked about this vehicle is the key fob. So standard classic Porsche key fob, you do get this, you know, Panamera shaped key fob, which I always thought is really cute. But one of the cool things here is, look, that Porsche crest lights up when you press buttons on it. How cool is that? I think that's a neat touch. Another thing I want to talk about is the ambient lighting. It looks very good at night. One thing Porsche has not been good at in the past is ambient lighting. My 2022 Macan GTS doesn't have even the option to get ambient lighting, but this one looks very good, and I love that it has that dynamic ambient lighting so it matches the cover art of your music, which I think is super cool. You've also, of course, got Apple CarPlay wireless standard, and you've also got Android Auto as well. I do like that those are standard, but definitely expected at this price point. I also like the look of the Apple CarPlay. It takes up the entire 10.9-inch screen, unlike in my Macan. So Porsche definitely has fixed a lot of complaints that I have about my older vehicle. So clearly the interior of this vehicle really did impress me. I think for the $133,000 price tag of this vehicle, it is quite deserving. I mean, this interior just feels immaculately put together and very solid and free of gimmicks, and I like that. Everything just feels easy to use and solid. However, the question at the forefront of everyone's mind, of course, when they're buying a Porsche or spending $133,000, is going to be, how does the car drive? So, like I said before, unlike the S-Class and the 7 Series, this car is meant to be for the driver, right? Like, I'm not always going to be chauffeuring people. I can if they want, but it would feel much better for me to be in the driver's seat. So it feels great to drive. It's heavy. Like, you can definitely tell that it's a hefty vehicle, right? It's long, it's wide, and it's still very fast. I think that's the cool thing. Of course, it's a Porsche, and that twin-turbo V6 is no slouch. 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds. It feels pretty quick. Fortunately, you don't have Sport Plus or that Chrono package, so it's not going to feel as rocket-like right off the start, but it does get you up to speed very, very quickly when you floor it, and it sounds very magical. I mean, no matter what, the V6 sounds really good. Obviously, a V8 would sound a little bit more brawny, but Porsche's twin-turbo V6 sounds excellent. Especially considering this is really the base trim of a Panamera, right? If you want to step up to that Turbo S or anything like that, you can get some really phenomenal sounding exhaust notes there, but I think this will satisfy most people. So the driving experience is very tranquil, right? Like, I think that's one of the coolest things that you would expect at this price point, and really what a lot of people are paying for a vehicle at this price point, is the luxury drive, where it's not loud, the interior is very, very quiet, free of rattles, and, you know, I will say the ride quality is nowhere near as refined and just floaty, I would say, like the 7 Series or the S-Class. This feels more like a driver's vehicle. You feel much more connected to the road, but it's still, you know, obviously a very compliant ride. It's superbly comfortable, but it's not as floaty. And I think that's a good word to use, floaty, because I drove the i7 recently, and that vehicle really just felt like you weren't even really driving. But this steering wheel, it feels all very connected. It feels like it's challenging you, honestly, to do more with it. The handling is phenomenal, as expected from a Porsche. It's very direct. It's not as light as some of the other vehicles. The power assist, it doesn't feel like it's taking over and driving for you. This just feels like a very easy to drive vehicle. In terms of road and wind noise, also quite minimal. I'm going pretty fast here and I really don't hear much, and this road is not the best road. It's again, not as quiet as the competitors, but I think there's a reason for it. This vehicle is lower, this vehicle is much sportier feeling than some of those competitors, right? So I think you get a little bit of a trade-off in terms of the, you know, extreme luxury. That's kind of the other side of the spectrum of the S-Class. And you sacrifice a little bit of that for a much more interesting driving experience. And just, this is just a better driving vehicle. I don't think anyone would say anything differently. This is just such a great vehicle to drive. The transmission is buttery smooth. There's nothing bad about this driving experience. You don't even feel like you're driving such a large and long vehicle. I mean, you're not going to mistake this for a 911, but there are certain parts where I'm like, wow, this really doesn't feel like such a hugely long, full-size luxury sedan. All right, we'll floor it a little bit here. Sport mode. A little bit of lag there, but very quick 0 to 60 there. Felt great, sounds great, feels predictable. Steering doesn't feel difficult at all. Very easy to keep this vehicle under control. And the moment I shift back to normal mode, it's a lot more comfortable. Chassis kind of loosens up, steering is less stiff. The vehicle is just really easy to maneuver. Such a great vehicle. Now the tech is a part that I do have to give kudos to Porsche for fixing a lot of the issues that I used to have with their vehicles, but I still think it's not really at the level of their competitors. I don't know if it ever will be. I don't know if Porsche really invests that much into their R&D for their software. It's good. I mean, it's better than some of the you know, economical brands out there, but it's still not going to match BMW, right? BMW's tech is flawless these days, or even Mercedes, honestly. I do think in general, the Volkswagen group is kind of falling behind in the tech department. So at the end of the day, if you have this type of money and you want the best of the best, you are looking at it. No other vehicle is going to come close to the driving experience of this vehicle. There's a reason Porsche's name and heritage kind of continues to sell tons of vehicles, right? And people always want a Porsche. People don't always want a BMW or Mercedes, I would say. But yeah, in terms of comfort, this vehicle is going to fall a little flat in certain areas, and you are going to have to pay a lot to get this vehicle to match some of the luxury features on those other competitors. But again, this really is for that type of person who has that sort of money and can afford the best, and they want the best, and they want to be able to drive while also carrying groceries and have a full family in the rear as well. So really, it's just going to be what you prioritize and what you want out of your vehicle. But honestly, all the vehicles in this class are very expensive and very, very impressive. So I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. Anyways, that's all I wanted to talk through today in this review. You can check out some of my other reviews up here. You can subscribe down here for more reviews every 2 to 3 weeks, and I will see you guys in the next review. Thanks, everyone. Bye.